everybody, and welcome back to What You Doing podcast. My name is Matt. This time I'm sitting down with Chase Bethea, a multi-award winning composer who's composed music for nearly 30 different independent video games. It was such a treat to have Chase on. I came across his post on Blue Sky asking for, press and podcasts to reach out to him. And it was perfect because I've been saying for a while that I want to have, some sort of musician, some sort of composer on the show. And this was a perfect match. Chase and I had a fantastic chat. It was really a big treat. Listening back for editing and stuff, I was just an absolute delight. We had such a good time. I will absolutely hope to have Chase on again in the future for whatever he's got going on. But listen, we already talked about this in the podcast, so let's get to it. I'll talk to you in the outro. I've been wanting to get someone on the podcast for a bit that does music, and it was one of those things where I was just like, I had a couple people in mind, and I was just like, all right, when I get a second. And, you popped up on Blue Sky and I was like, well, here we go. I'm like, he's looking to get out there. So that's great. That's, it helps out both of us.
Yeah. I
like to say I'm not a very creative person, and it's more like I'm not artistically creative. Everyone's creative in their own way, but I'm not artistically creative in that way. So, I like to say, like, I'm always curious about, people who are artistically creative, how they do that, what their process is, how they come to it, that sort of thing. And so that just finally spawned this podcast. So, people wanting to get out and talk about their projects and their work and stuff like that is always fantastic. I love being able to talk to people, and then people have a great time being on the podcast. And I'm like, that's great. It's like,
yeah,
it's, if nothing else, I had a good time chatting, and hopefully everybody enjoys listening. So
that's true. Yeah. Content like that people really enjoy, especially during these times. So it all works out.
I fell bass backwards, as I like to say, into a really good time to try to make a platform for people to talk about their stuff. I've said it kind of plainly to some people, and where I'm just like, I don't care if they view the podcast as just like marketing for their thing. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Like if they're like, I want to get more eyes on my Kickstarter, I want to get more eyes on my game, whatever. Cool. Good. I want that too. Probably. If I have you on the show, I probably also want more people to see your thing and give you money for your thing.
Yes.
That's good in my book, like,
that's a win.
Yeah. I'm not mad at, like, I doubt anybody thinks I'm mad about it, but if it's like, I heard the podcast and like 4 people bought my game. Hell yeah. Cool. I'm not anybody. I don't know what I'm doing.
No, you know what you're doing. You got the podcast started. You got the platform going, so you're good there.
I do honestly feel, I was telling a friend of mine, I honestly feel like the hardest part of this whole process was starting. Mm-hmm. And I tricked myself into thinking it was easy. And so I started it. And then I realized it was more difficult than I thought. But I'm like, I already started. I gotta keep going. I already have like 2-3 episodes. I gotta figure it out, I guess. So, hi everybody, welcome to another episode of What You Doing? My name is Matt. I'm here today with Chase Bethea. Chase, say hi.
Hey everyone. Hey Matt. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. I'm doing great. No one ever says how are you. I wasn't ready for it. But no, I hope you're having a good day. Chase was looking for podcasts to be on Blue Sky, and I was like, hell yeah. I've said a couple times I've wanted to get musicians on. I've had a lot of like game designers. I've had Darren, a writer, on, and that's great. And I was like, I'd love to get musicians on. I want to branch out and have as many kind of different, I don't want to say disciplines, but just like people doing whatever. And so Chase was looking to be on podcasts to talk about his music. And here we are. It was great. It's that easy. If you want to be on the podcast, say, hey, I want to be on a podcast. People will find you.
You would think, but that's interesting. I'm Big Love. Thank you for having me on. But yeah, some people actually don't respond. Believe it or not, it's not that easy. And
that's
thinking, okay.
That's kind of the goal. Like, I feel like I have a podcast. You want to be on a podcast. Let's get together.
You would think.
You would, well, there's a lot of things I would think, because there's a lot of things I think about the way things should work. Well, we don't need to get into that right now.
That's a whole nother podcast.
That's a different show. I need to be on somebody else's show. This is a different space for that. But before we get too deep into it, Chase, why don't you go ahead, give everybody an intro, give your intro, give your background, and what you got going on.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Chase Bethea. I'm a multi-award winning professional video game composer. Been working in the industry for 14 years and shipped about 25 games thus far. Almost 30. I'll be 30 probably before the end of the year. So it'd be kind of cool to just switch over from the 25 to the 30 mark. So that's awesome. And I've been doing mostly guest speaking for different colleges like Berklee College of Music, Game Developers Conference. I did about 55 talks in 2.5 years from institutions to other game conferences around the states and things like that, and also do live performances of my work to kind of expand my audience of the work that I do with video game music, because I specialize in dynamic music design where it's tied to game mechanics. And that's just mostly a big, short, sweet thing about me.
I want to talk about like your talks and stuff first. Like what goes into something like that? Because I always, a thing that's come up a lot in the interview so far on the podcast, I've had a lot of TTRPG designers, and a thing that's come up a lot is the essence of community knowledge building. Sure. And so like hearing that you give talks at GDC and stuff like that is really interesting. So like what generally goes into those talks? What sort of what's your focus on those sorts of things?
Yeah, so the first talks that I was giving about was mostly how I did dynamic music design for a game called Quest Like Pocket, and the approach in terms of it not just having to be a sound palette, because I'm really big on sonic identity, whereas if one of our strongest senses is our hearing, as long as we protect it, because if some danger is happening, we'll mostly hear it first before we see it. And so that's the same type of approach I take with game music and sonic identity. And so I was building a palette that is aside from, most people think they need to build like an orchestral palette with the woodwinds and the horns and the different families of like strings and percussion, but you can also do the same thing in a fantasy adventure style, and also creating different mechanic music tie-ins that align to combat skills within the mobile game. And so that was one talk that I gave at GDC. It's in the vault. And the other talk that I was on with Zalavier Nelson Jr. and Clifton B, St. Charles Germain, and Jared Huntley was like micro talks. So it was kind of alluding to the game that's most recently came out this year, which is a Ground Zero. It came out April 4th, 2025. But how it was kind of utilizing the tools of music design to kind of align to the mechanics with the tools within the game. Something that's mostly, I believe, is unprecedented in the survival colony sim genre, and didn't realize I was innovating before I was innovating. I was just doing it because I was thinking it would be cool to do, and then realized, oh, okay, I'm onto something really different and unique here. So that was another talk that I did. The past couple of years have been mostly emphasizing the diversity in game audio in terms of people doing the proper thought process and cognizance of hiring many minorities within the game industry that may not have the opportunities that other demographics would have, and the mindsets and the tools and just the navigation in terms of having a healthy conversation to just bring that to light, and what that encompasses and other resistances or fears that people have had. And it was mostly just a round table discussion, me giving a small anecdote, some statistics, and then open it to the floor of those who were attending to share their experiences. I've
been really digging on that sort of collective knowledge share. Sounds like too corporate, too businessy. Just people talking about their experiences, talking about their history within specific career paths and stuff like that, and just sort of connecting in that way. I think it's such a powerful thing, especially like you said, when you're talking about fostering diversity in specific paths, specific careers. Just having people come together and share their experiences and talk to each other and meet each other is an incredibly powerful tool. So yeah, I wish I could go see that GDC talk. The dang GDC. It's GDC time for, depending on when people are listening to this, And so there's a couple GDC talks that I'm like, I definitely want to watch these. And then I've seen a couple that are like, oh, this is in the vault. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't have $3,000, so I hope it was a good one.
Dang, it's $3,000 now. It's WildStar.
It's a lot. It's the last time I looked, it was an amount of money that I just went, okay, and closed the tab. I was just like, yep, okay, it's what that is.
Be waiting for a YouTube drop.
Yeah, I'll keep it. Do you like a newsletter, or you got like a 2-week, like free, like an intro? No, okay, that's fine.
There's some things in the vault though. I just want to kind of put out there that are not behind a paywall. So even if you go on the tab and you look specifically, like I think what mine is my talk that I was speaking about for not the roundtables. They're never recorded. The roundtables aren't. But mine specifically, I think it may be kind of one of those. Hey, check it out. Kind of get a feel for it. The try before you buy type of thing. So that's cool.
There are some free things. I always think of like in the vault as behind the paywall, but that's true. There's right. More than a couple things every year that they put out.
Trust me, I've sourced through, so that's how I know.
You're like, I'm on there. I'm looking at it.
I'm digging through. Yep.
So you mentioned I guess the newest game you worked on, a Grounded Zero. I did see there's a new game on your Bandcamp that wasn't there the last time I looked. So I don't know if that's you did a sneaky little update last time I looked. So that's a spin-off to a previous game that you worked on.
Yes.
And so I'm curious how,
which happens to be the 5th year anniversary today.
Oh wow, that's cool. I always like when smaller games like that, the companies are able to like celebrate their anniversary like that, where it's just like yeah, we've been making games and like it's been X years. It's fun when indie studios are able to have that kind of longevity.
It's usually me who's kind of celebrating it though. I have it on my calendar. I don't know if the developers are going to post about it, but I'm aware of it. I'm part of it. I'm going to put it.
You email the devs. You're like, oh, congrats on 5 years, and they're like, what?
I didn't email at all. I just know what the time is. I know what it is. No, that's funny. There was actually something that's cool that's supposed to come out today, but I don't know. That obviously it's not out, so I can't say. It's not that I won't say. It's just that by saying more than I already have, I can't say.
The fun of NDAs and agreements and things where it's just like, I can't say. Well, what can't you say? I can't say.
I'm under Chase DA. I'm not under anything else. I'm really trying to reserve myself.
No, I love. Yeah. Well, we'll switch gears.
Yeah, put it there. But sorry. This is a roundabout way to say. I'm just having fun. I'm just saying.
No, you're good.
Being conspicuous.
I love that sort of tease where it's like, well, listen, I can't. We'll talk. Maybe later. Listen. We'll leave them wanting more. We'll have you back on. Yeah. We'll talk about your 30th game. We'll see how it goes.
That's in summer. That's that sneak thing that we did. You're like, wait, was it there before? I was like, I might have did drop it. Yeah. So you're paying attention, man. I love it.
But so I found it really interesting, and this is one of the main things I kind of wanted to talk about. So you did music for a Ground, and you did music for a Ground Zero, which isn't really a sequel. It's kind of it's a survival game in the same way, but is more space focused, more tech focused. How did you find the experience of, or was it even really like revisiting the soundscape? Were you like, oh, I need to like have callbacks, I need to have similar themes, or were you like, this has to be completely different, I have to throw everything out?
Well, actually, a Ground Zero is the spinoff of a Ground. The only difference is that it's 3D versus 2D. So there is, you can go to space. You still have magic stuff. It's still all in line with a Ground. Oh. It's all tied in. Yeah, it's all. You don't have to play one over the other. It's just a preference of. Typically, the players are aesthetically pulled to things. This is just the era we're in. What is it art? How does it look? All of the graphics, if it's running 60, 80 frames per second, all that technical stuff. I just think does the gameplay well? Are you having fun? It is a game after all. All the other stuff is extra. But yeah, that is all tied in together. So my task was they didn't want it to sound like a ground, but they wanted still references from it. And so I had to remix some of my own things to kind of make sure the tie-ins were there in a very subconscious way if people are really listening. So I utilized motifs from specific tracks that were based on where you were in the game that were in sync with from the original ground. And if you know that soundtrack well, you'll hear those references in a Ground Zero. So I didn't thankfully have to scrap it. The only difference is that I had to create an entire new sound palette, which I was talking about sonic identity, because the developer was very clear. It's like, I want it to sound more modern and versus more retro. I was like, cool, perfect, I can do that. That's great. Because a lot of people think that I'm only in this retro space or that I only have this type of electronic sound. It's like, no, I've done folk music. I've won an award for bossa nova style, and the first in-game music that it was ever heard of in that regard. And I've done other types of music. I'm known as a Swiss Army knife for video game composition. So I love being able to branch further than what I've already done before because I'm only in competition with myself. And that is the focus in terms of keeping a cohesive soundtrack with the sonic identity, but also referencing to my own work, thankfully, to have the players be reminded of these things that they love so much from the original game.
Do you feel like there was, you mentioned like being in competition with yourself. Do you feel like did you feel like a pressure to like show that you've grown, or like look at all the stuff I know how to do now. Look at the cool music tricks I know how to do now. I can make a musical kickflip. Check it out. Look at it.
The pressure, I still am very grateful and to be able to score the game, but I'm equally as grateful to have finished it as well. The pressure was definitely with it. There was just a psychological feeling, not just with me, but with what I used to call the Agroundians, and like that community kind of just. There used to be a bunch of them, and then they kind of just disappeared. And I think that was because of the art style changing, being more like 3D versus 2D. And even though game players are odd sometimes, they complained about the art style and the 2D, but then when it was 3D, they complained about that too. So I'm like, what do you want? Do you like it? Does it play? Do you have fun again? So I had a lot of great random feedback that was coming to me per track when I was releasing it. But in this one, it was mostly, all right, cool, yeah, do your thing. Like, they expect that it's good, so they know it's good, and they're like, yeah, you're doing what you're supposed to do. And so I'm thinking with myself, well, again, I have to remix my own work, which, again, it's a good thing, but it's also a little bit difficult because I'm trying to think I wrote this, I felt as good as it could be, but how do I trick myself into believing that it could be better? And so the only input that I was getting mostly was from the team. And so with the programmer, he and I were bouncing, I'd write something and then they'd share their thoughts. And that was it. And it wasn't until I did the listening party last month with Bonus Stage and then started teasing a little bit of the tracks that I start to see beyond, people really rock with this. They really like it. But one of my favorite lines is from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who's Secret of the Ooze, one of my favorite movies. They like it. They really like it. And I was thinking, that's how I felt. And so, yeah, I mean, I journaled mostly my thoughts, and I have like the ground, and I have the Ground Zero journal in terms of what I was going through mentally, and some voice stuff I'll be releasing on the Patreon of the development of it. But off the top, I can say, like, the pressure, yes, was within me, and it took some time to finish some tracks that typically wouldn't take me as long but I liked that because I don't believe in rushing art. I do not stand with crunch. I do not stand by the folks who are, you got to get things done and you got to do things on the timeline when they're saying, well, we need it tomorrow and type of stuff. I do not subscribe to that type of work ethic and things. I found in the recent 6 to 7 years that my greatest work has come because I've spent more time taking it to get done versus a shorter time doing it. I can still do it in that short time. I came from that. I understood that. I was able to write music in 3 tracks a day consistently. But what I learned is that if I don't want to write, I don't write until something comes to me and I'm ready mentally to just feel, I can visually see myself writing visually here, and then actually enacting and sitting here at the station and then doing the work. That's something that has been more rewarding versus trying to force myself to meet a milestone. And not all developers can really work with that. And that's okay. But what's odd about it is that developers will also take their time. Other teams will take their time to expand and elongate certain projects because of things just not working or new ideas. And so I think that music should have the same respect of that, because it's over 50% of the experience that the players are going to have, especially when I do it in dynamic music form where you can't turn the music off, or you're going to forget, it's going to miss a key for something that you're doing in the game mechanically overall to further progress in the game.
So you got me curious. Talk to me about this dynamic music thing, because I feel like I have like a picture in my head. I have like an idea of what it means.
Sure.
But also, I apparently didn't know what I thought I knew about the games. So maybe I'm wrong.
So I'll give the small example with what you probably may be familiar with, and then the things that I typically do in my style of writing dynamic music. A small history, and then what I do. You've played Sonic 2 before?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. When Sonic is running out of time, the music kind of speeds up a little bit. And it does that on its own or other things. That's an interactive, adaptive type of approach for dynamic music. It's all kind of those 3 words, but there are specific definitions. That one in this case is adaptive music because it's adapting to the environment of what the player is doing. If you're not meeting that time limit, the music is going to change and then go forward from there. That as far as Sega Genesis, so they were brilliant enough to kind of be doing it back then, and there's some other examples, but the most modern example I can think of is if anyone's played Batman Arkham City, that there's a lower layer of music, whereas there's not that much things happening. And then when the combat begins, other music layers come in and it gets more intense. And then there's a higher level of music, whereas it's just all the instruments and everything's coming at once. And then if you get beat up, then there might be a filter that happens. And then once you are done with all the combat, then the music kind of does a small stinger and then goes back to whatever world music that it is. And that is the dynamic music that I'm speaking of mostly in that regard. For me, I've done many different styles. I did one where for a fighting game, the music is on a screen for that and transitions seamlessly into the fight between 2 robots. And it has that layer system where it's a low combat field with not that many instruments, and then it changes based off of who's doing better in the fight, and then it has more intensity combat going on, then a victory theme, and then smoothly transitions with the same track back to the menu screen without ever being interrupted, including it being within rhythm time too. There's other examples, whereas, and I did it with the game Starting a School for Witches, which will come out eventually, hopefully this year, that they have this fighting game system, whereas in the RPG for school witches and they're clearing the forest. And I wrote it in a string quartet form, whereas there's horns in the beginning and the cello and the viola, the violin, and the first and second violin, they are based on elements, so fire, water, ice, and air, and earth and air, excuse me. The percussion represents earth, fire represents strings, water represents some whimsical light synths, and depending on what you're doing or how well you're doing in the combat, those instruments will come in and out of each other, even though there's a thematic form to it too. So that's kind of the dynamic music design I'm thinking. And with the ground zero, what I did was within the UI that happens, the UI that's on the screen, for the tools that you're using to mine or build, the music's going to change based on what items you choose. Then the music will change based off of combat. Then it will change based off of progress you're happening within the game that the task is. Then it will change based off the environment. So if you're in the subway, or if you're in communications, or if you're in space. And all those things are tied together based off of where you are and what you're doing.
That sounds incredibly complicated. How do you even write something like that? Because it sounds mind-boggling. It's like you have to. It sounds like you're designing like 5 to 6 things that are happening simultaneously, and then shifting between them.
Yeah.
And, probably some of that is done once it's all put into the game and all of that, but it still has to exist, right?
Yeah. The base of it is understanding games. And I've been playing games since people play instruments. I started like 6 years old, 5 years old. So because I played so many games in my life, I understand game design and I understand mechanics at its form for what it is. It's art form, it's design form. And my mind is able to kind of reverse engineer what those things will be. So by the time I'm writing music, I understand music. So I'm able to mostly now conflate and glue these systems and things together once I'm working with the development team, which is why I always say, please see me as part of the team, because I'm not just a composer. At least for me, I can speak for myself. And we'll just go back to the items changing. It was just a cool idea. I thought, said, wow, what if, and that's what programmer languages are, that the music would change based off of just changing the item. These players are going to be in this game for hours. There's another game that's like that where it's one of the most popular in the world. I don't want to give them any more shine than they already have, but we know what that game is. And so it's similar to that. But those are just loops. And that's good, but I'm thinking I could take a step further and then just, if I could pull this off even without the middleware, and I would have definitely used middleware if they had it working with the custom engines that we kind of utilized. But it was just mostly understanding this item changes, this music changes. That's the base level. The complicated part comes, I guess, with mostly like trying to code, but I actually got over with knowing how to do HTML in high school, and so that happens to be the code that we were working with, and it's just a slightly more advanced. So just working with the programmer, telling my idea, and then I'm writing and designing it in music form. It's called a through composed form. So I have A sections, B sections, C sections. And so it's a horizontal and a vertical form. And I'm just writing all the musical ideas, and then I'm trying to just sculpt what works together, what feels good, and then what I understand what the game will be asking for and what it will be. And after that, once I get that down and I implement it and it feels good and it's seamless and it makes sense, then I just build from there. The hard part, like I said, is really feeling what the game is asking for musically, so that I can project how many hours I think I would spend down there. So I can't take the time to play the game for that many hours and then come back and do it. I have to kind of fast track that in my mind space. And the only way to have done that, like I said, is building a solid sound palette and sonic identity.
What does that process look like, right? So we talked about how, you like to take your time with composing, make sure you're feeling it. Once you're feeling it, once you're like, I got it, I know what I want this to be, let's go. What does that look like? Like, tell me about this.
This is the creative process you're asking me about, right?
Yeah. Like, because, and again, this is the thing where I'm just like, I hope people like listening to the podcast, because I'm just like, all right, you turn on your computer, what happens? Like, tell me about like, what do you do? I want to know the process.
Okay. I wrote this down because I got this question a lot and I had to sit and think. I said, I'm going to get this question more, so I'm going to write the steps. So I hope you don't mind that I'm going to read this, because this is
perfect.
Exactly what it is. This is because when I wrote this, when I was actually doing it, because I realized this is what people really want, the sauce, right?
Yeah.
There's no sauce. This is how my mind thinks. So I wrote it down. So here we go. I named the file in the DAW. The DAW is a digital audio workstation. The name of the file is important, because if I was to name this song 1 or whatever, just to kind of get started, computers are good and they're bad. So if you had to rename it later, it would say, we can't find the file, or your stuff crashed, and now it's going to be a problem. So I name it what I know the song name is going to be first, and then I add on whatever other number is going to be for iterations after that. Then I build the sound palette that I keep talking about. whatever synths, whatever external instruments, whatever other things I'm thinking about is going to be, I set up those into the digital audio workstation. I play the game, I read the game design document, I hear what the game is asking for. I come up with a word theme in terms of if it's going to be boss, or then in thinking like aggression, space might equal or magic sometimes, or relaxing. This kind of helps me formulate where the music is going to motivically or texturally be, so I don't have to just pull it out of thin air. So then I design rhythms and chord textures and melodies to match the word theme. And there are many techniques for that, but that's mostly just kind of getting a feel of musically what I'm trying to like convey. And I try to at least write 4 bars. A lot of people get hung up. I'm getting into kind of something that's in the book that I'm publishing this year. So they're different. I wrote, I think, over 10 ways you can get over writer's block. And one of them is, the thing is like, just write 4 bars. If you can write 4 bars, when I was in writing class in community college, my English composition teacher said, a lot of people think they can write, they can't write 10 pages, but if you can write 1 page, you can write 5, you write 5, you write 10, you write 10, 20, and 20 is 100. And so I take the same thought process and put it into just music writing. 4 bars. If you can't write 4 bars, that's literally the antecedent and a consequent of which is the answer, the question and answer of motivic writing, melody writing. That's 4 bars. If you can't do that, you have a problem. You need to kind of rephrase some things and work on some of that. Because 4 bars could get you to 8 bars, because then if you understand music, then you can go forward. And then what should happen is that you start to get inspired by something. But even if you're not, you started something rather than starting nothing. So I try to release 4 bars. And every bar format, because of the section dynamic music format, is good. Because if it's 4 bar section here, and I get to 8, now I've already got 1 section of the dynamic music in that through composed form. So that's the A section. You see how it's kind of tying into like where I understand like music, and I'm trying to pull it together. That's just what makes sense. Then I mark each section of that. So it's A, then B, then C. Then once I finish the music, I send a draft over and for the minutes of approval to the team. And then once it's approved, I check on the mix of the music and on different systems. So I do different monitors. I check it in the car, I check it on the phone if I want to. But typically the car and the phone are the best, and obviously because I'm writing mostly on my headphones. Then I render out each section, and I create the loops for the section so that they can be implemented. Then I render out the full arrangement of the track for the soundtrack purpose of that. And then I render out the stems for full arrangement, because people typically now want to study what I've done. So I kind of have a store for that for people to kind of check out what I did and how I did, because it's so different from most video game music they've heard. Then I clean up the session. I'll use tracks in the sense, so if I have to pull it up again, the computer is not acting funky with me, and I'm not going to be funky with it because it didn't find my shit. Sorry for
no, you're fine. You're fine.
So that rolled out. So yeah, I'll try to keep it PG. So then, like, I upload the files to the repository. Then, and the dynamic music steps, I implement the music. I edit the code in the software so it fits seamlessly with the mechanic. That means I need to have specific codes to fit the developer codes to test it and go back and forth to kind of get a feeling of it and how it feels, if it's smooth, if there's fades, if there's editing in the code for the fades to happen. And then I update it on the audio asset list sheet, which is what all the music that's needed for the game. It encompasses the BPM, the key, the tempo, and the length. And then I master the track. And then I make different versions of the track in MPV, MP3, and a WAV. And then from there, it goes into a whole different process of distribution, which is now out of the creative process, because that is all admin work.
I know it was your first step, but I just absolutely appreciate it. As somebody with a big IT background, I love computers are good and computers are bad. So here's how I do. And I'm just like, yes, actually, perfect. Yes. I love
me too.
Because I do the same thing. Like when I'm editing, I do the same. If I'm just like new episode, I'm like, no, I'm never going to remember what this is. And then when I go to look at it, I'm going to go, the hell was this? What was I doing? What is supposed to, and it's very funny. It's like, yeah, music is the exact same way. Music is,
at least for me, some people don't name their things. And if that's how their brain works, I salute them, but that is not, I know I have not been able to find things. And then if you were trying to open it later, it may not open. So you never know what it is.
Right. What is new song? What was this for? What was new? It's dead, whatever it is. So, yeah. I hope they email me. Chase, where was that new song you were working? The new song. That's what it was.
Which new song?
That's great. Yeah, God, I love and this is why I love hearing about people's processes. Like, I love that you're like you're looking at the game, you're like learning about it, like not even just I'm looking at gameplay, whatever, like you're reading the design docs, like you're reading like descriptions and stuff. You're trying to get a feel for it. You're literally just like deciding the vibes. And then you're like, okay, here are the vibes. And then you're thinking about it. And then just like, this is why I said at the top, like, I'm not an artistic creative person. The idea that you're just like, okay, I'm going to read this about the game. Okay, here's the music. That's like magic to me. Like, that is literally like, that is magical. Like, my brain does not work like that. And it's so incredible to just the idea that you were like, okay, it's like a survival game and you're going to be digging, you're going to be mining, and you can eventually get a spaceship. And you're like, okay, here you go. There's your music. And I know it's not as simple as that. I don't mean to make it sound like that, no, but it's wild. It's so I have such incredible respect for it that it's like, there was no music and you dig rocks and dirt and stuff. Here you go. Here's your dirt rock. Here's your dirt rock music. Enjoy that, my friend. Oh gosh, it's so cool.
Thank you.
I hope you don't think I'm blowing smoke up your ass, because it's honestly, it's so incredible.
No, I've heard that from there's a close person in my life before, and then when my dad was in my listening party last month, he was saying the same thing, and then I was hearing from other people, like one of my bosses joined in and other things, and people really think, that it's that I am coming up with magic. And it's come to a point where I wrote a jingle for my dad's radio show that he has on Sundays, Smooth Jazz radio show. He wanted me to write this jingle, and I wrote it, and then I hired the singer, and I sent it to him. And my stepmother is saying, like, you did that? And I almost said no, because I didn't think that I wrote it when I heard it. I'm thinking, like, wait, I did play bass on that. I did play guitar on that. And I don't have a background in guitar lessons. I don't have a background in bass lessons. I just have a background in alto saxophone and piano. And so between alto sax and piano, that's all I know how to do. But I created this jingle, and I hired the singer and put it all together. And so, I almost said no. So I think I'm at the point where I start to believe that I'm a wizard, Harry.
You just wake up one day and you're like, and there's just a whole CD of music, and you're like, okay, now hang on. Where did this come from?
Yeah, I was honored last year for Black History Month in the UK. And I went for celebration of me. I was like, I'm going to listen to everything I've written the past 14 years, including stuff that's been unreleased. And I was kind of tripping out myself, I think, because I haven't listened to it in a while, thinking, wait, I wrote that? Or when I hear my work on like a video game radio show and other game music from Command and Conquer to Undertale to Secret of Mana's playing, and then I hear a ground come on, I'm thinking, oh yeah, wait, is that? Or I hear reality, I'm thinking, that sounds that's me. Like,
who did that? You're like, wait, it was me.
Yeah,
I'm the one.
I think I'm having a slight out of body conscious experience sometimes with it. So I don't feel like you're blowing smoke. I guess I'm kind of going to that space too, in a way, because I don't really know what I'm doing either.
I love that. I find it like really endearing when like even creative people are, even the people who create all of these things are like, I don't know how I do it either. Like I sit down and I write, or I sit down and I compose, or I sit down and whatever, and then it's there and it's okay. It's so incredible. I really do. I like you mentioned in the process, like listening back in your monitors, listening back in the car, listening back on your phone. I just really like the idea of you of you're like, all right, and then you just got like a CD and you got to go out in the car and just like, no, this sounds bad in the car. No, no. And like you have to go back inside and like adjust it. It makes a lot of sense, but it's a very funny visual image to me.
That's the CD. Thankfully, days are long gone. I do not miss those. But yeah, I'm still doing that. And if I have that, I just have to make some quick notes. Thankfully, they're not a lot anymore, which means my mixing has gotten better. My ears have gotten better too. So yeah, that is exactly the process. And now we'll have to come back. Typically, I do it when I know I'm going to be hours away from something. So I don't do it while I'm in the creative mode because it's the senses need a break as well, and so does your mind. So then I'm switching my modes as we're about to right now, and I'm taking a break, and then I'll come back to it the next day to make those notes. Because I know it will really bother me, and I'm like, I gotta fix this the next day. But my ears will be fresh, my mind will be fresh because I rested, I actually slept, and then I'm ready to just do it and then knock it out, and I love it even more. And so that process has been really cool too.
I love how much focus it is clear that you put on pacing yourself and giving yourself like rest and care. I think it is so easy for people to get so caught up in wanting to get a thing done and not in a negative way that they want to be done with it. Like it's like, oh, I want to be done. But I think it's so easy for people to be like, well, if I just work on it, it'll be done. When actually like it feels like half of the trick, half of the secret is work on it when it feels right to work on it, you know? And like, you know, I feel like you said at the top, like you can't force it, you know, like if you're up in the morning and you're like, how do I feel about it? No, can't do it. And I respect how much emphasis it's clear that you put on that.
Thank you. And that comes with experience. There's, like I said, there's times I've done the gotta get this done. I'm on a deadline. I have to reach this milestone. And I did my time with that years and things. And I think it came to just more mental maturity that I got to, whereas I understand what is healthy for me, what is not stressing me out, and what can I work with and do that is going to create something better versus something that I was kind of forced to do. And I remember sitting down at the workstation and telling myself, okay, write 4 bars, but I'm mentally not feeling it. And so I'll try, and I might have written 4 bars. Maybe I got 2, but because it just wasn't happening. Sometimes getting, like I was saying earlier, like we got to rephrase, you know, what that is. But I've never seen anything that I haven't experienced myself. And so I'll just take the headphones off and I'll shut it down. And it has happened not many times, but those are the times I know, okay, this is something I learned about myself. I can't, as much as I probably need to do something, I can't do it today, but I'm going to have to try again tomorrow because I know if I need to kind of at least get that. One thing about me is I'm not a procrastinator, I'm a proactivator. So I'm definitely going to hit those milestones and deadlines, but I understand game development cycles. So that's the other experience that comes with that, at least for me to have that. Whereas I've not mostly ever missed a milestone. I might have get extended for some things, but I haven't. If I got the extension, I've hit those extensions, but I've never not missed a deadline, especially hard ones.
What has your experience been working with game development? Like it seems like, I don't want to say I don't want to accidentally phrase this in a weird way and say something I don't mean to. Because I get the feeling that a lot of your work has been what people would consider contract stuff, right? Like you know, teams reach out to you and, you know, contract you for such amount of music. What has your experience been with that? Because I think even with working inside a team, delays happen, it goes how it goes. But with that extra separation, like, have you felt frustrated by it? Have you felt sort of free in the sense that like you're not dealing with all of that bureaucracy? You just have your, you have your assignment, you have your deadlines, and you can work how you want to work.
I allude to this in the book, but here I'll mention there have been frustrating times. What I really miss is when I was starting out that I could go into the space and there'd be someone working on over there, someone working on program over here, and then we all go to lunch together, or we kind of powwow, play some Nerf gun stuff a little bit, and then we're still working and getting our things taken care of. Those days are very long gone. It's very remote, and that's cool. It's a mentality thing, though, with what I've learned about. It's not about the game you're working on. It's about the people you work with that are working on the game. And if their mentality isn't about value and understanding, them valuing themselves, I guess, first, too, they're probably not going to value other humans. So that's going to trickle down into how you work with other people. It could be a really great idea. The art and the story and everything else could make great sense and it'd be phenomenal. But if they're a shitty person, or if they don't have the mental aptitude to really know how to nurture a team, even as small as 3 people, there's going to be some friction and some misunderstandings, and it's going to make working on that project very difficult or not worth it. I've walked away from some projects at a certain point in the past 5 years because I've awakened to know, oh yeah, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I can tell you don't know what you want. We've gone through this. I've done this down. Oh, you're trying to expand past this. Oh, you're crossing the line with communication for this over here. And then there's some developers that just, like I said, you got to talk to people first to understand, like have a good conversation, and it's going to take more than one to really assess hopefully if you're sharp to kind of at least understand people. For me, I have a background in working in retail for 10 years. So not only do I understand how to talk to people, I understand how people work overall, because I had a bunch of different personalities come at me randomly whenever obviously was walking through the door, and different fields of retail. So I have a different set of experience skills. I have a different set of skills that most people don't have. But this allowed me to be able to navigate just a little bit better because I can see what those patterns are. And so the frustration doesn't happen that much anymore, thankfully, because now I understand the patterns. And I also just remove myself quickly or after the fact, not so long after, once I understand, okay, yeah, no, I'm probably not the person that you're going to want to work with, regardless of how great you think my work is or how great I think your work is. It's just mentally we're not on the same page. And I'm happier and have a lot less stressful thoughts going on thinking about it. And it's in that case, I leave it as all business, because for me, it's not totally personal unless they personally try to attack me. But it just sets aside a lot of just bullshit in the future. So that is really what I think about in terms of like the frustration. Because like I said, there's a couple teams I've been working with recently. They're amazing. Like their thought process, they think about how they elevate themselves to kind of want their projects to be better. But they're thinking almost like me without me having to say. And so I don't have to coach and I don't have to teach. They just understand and they get it and they don't mind. When I see that, the biggest thing for me is when someone invests in themselves, even outside of the game, like maybe they mention things about self-care or taking care of this or doing other things, whatever those standards are for them, that's a good sign for me, because then I'm understanding. I go with the mantra of I'm going to treat myself the way I wish others to treat me, and I treat myself good. Great, almost. So I don't go with the treat others the way you wish to want to be treated, because they will not reciprocate.
I want you to do your fucking job, and you're like, ah, damn, this doesn't work. This doesn't work when we.
Yeah. So it really comes down to, like I said, I know it's a longer answer, but it really just comes down to the mentality and the maturity of understanding how they take care of themselves in an all-encompassed form. And once I understand that, and I at least see and can detect that, then I know it's going to be a good working relationship, because everything else will just fall into place.
No, I love that. That's great. You know, you mentioned, you sort of alluded to something being delayed, and like that has to be frustrating. Obviously, you know, something that you worked as a part of, something that you put a lot of time and effort into, and I feel like that has to be more frustrating as someone, you know, quote unquote on the outside, where you're just like, I don't know. It's coming. I'll know when everybody else knows.
Yeah, because like you said, everyone came together to make something happen and they all want to see their work out there so that they can possibly utilize it for the way the field works is that once this great piece of art is out, it can help you get other work. And the perception of that is a very strong magnet. It could, some of them do okay, and some of them do well, and some of them do great, and some of them do exceptional. And we know what those titles are, especially from the mostly independent scene, right? The AAAs, they got the money, so they're just going to slap it over with you with all their money and their blanket stuff, and they got it. They got it like that. They just got it like that. I'm just going to keep it conspicuous. And so, but the smaller teams, when that stuff is released, if it pops, that's something that will help someone else's life that can be accentuated. In the book, I talk about, I think it's called level skips. Whereas there were projects that I was on that I thought were going to get me to that next tier, that was going to get me to that next space, that was going to help me get bigger and better paying work. And that shit didn't happen because it wasn't released. And the sad part about it is that most of the time it's that last 10% where they just send it out, because if no one knows it, if it's not out, no one knows it exists, and you're kind of withholding the world from art in itself that people could enjoy. I mean, I had someone tell me that my music from a ground helped them through a depression. I've struggled with some depression some years, and I know what that's like. So if I know that if I see someone's playing my music in the Ukraine, or someone is having a hard time in high school from whatever things are going on with them, and my music helped that, if I didn't release that music, I don't know if that would have ever happened. I don't know. But thankfully I released it, and it helped someone get through those hard times. That's what it's about, I think, in terms of enlightening the world with things that came from you to help others be better in whatever that capacity would be.
You mentioned, games coming out and kind of being, good or great or exceptional or, even unexpected hits. And the example that immediately pops to my mind, I think like the textbook example for this that I think people should really focus on is Among Us.
I didn't expect that.
Well, so Among Us came out and was out for years.
Yes.
And like it didn't take off. Like it was not incredibly popular. And during COVID, for whatever reason, however it happened, it had a huge explosion. So much so the development team was working on a new game, and they stopped working on the new game to go back and support Among Us and do updates and all of this. And now Inner Sloth has moved from, I don't know who they were before. Like I'd never heard of them. I'm not going to say they were unknown because I just didn't know. And so that would be silly, but they've gone from, a unknown quote unquote development studio to the people who made Among Us and are now like, which, say what you will about like the commodification of video games and such and such and such. Among Us is incredibly popular. Among Us is a ridiculously popular game, but Inner Sloth has also now moved into publishing and to like entrepreneurial ventures and giving back to the community and feeding back into the community. And so it's so wild to see. Like, I always feel like I think if I worked on any games, I don't think I would work on a game with the thought that it would be the next Among Us, in the sense that like it's going to blow up and have 20 million players or whatever. I would want to work on it thinking that it was Among Us because I would want to have a game that if it was popular, like you said, would elevate, right? It's like, oh, if this game is popular, this is the thing we're going to work on the next, it's going to help us get better. We're going to get better. We're going to make better games. We're going to work to better the community. And what was your example? I feel like you were ready to say something, and then I had a curveball.
I thought we were going to say Undertale because of the massive, or Celeste, like the massive amount that had typically people really gravitated to in terms of Celeste, coming from the story of dealing with, the mental breaks that they have, and that regard, and then Undertale with the storyline that has too, but then also like the music that also is tied to together. But what I love more about the Innersloth thing is that it's kind of like the super acrobatic rocket power battle cars, or also known as Rocket League. So it used to be that old title. It used to be that old title when it was released, and no one cared, and then they changed Rocket League, and then it blew up. But like what I love about the Innersloth for the Among Us thing, like you said, is that it became a publisher, and yes, they are giving back to the community because they created a fund to help others get their work out, which is what the state of the field of the industry is in right now. And they're thinking like, we're successful. We're not only going to publish the games, we're going to create a fund to help specific other teams help get their work out too, because they know what it was like. And that is how you build, I think, proper community for something, where you're going up and you're lifting in things. If you're not doing it on the way up, like kind of like what I was doing, you're like, while I'm building, I'm also giving back. You can also build, create, and then turn around and give back in that way too. And so I love your example way more than what I thought you were going to say.
No, you had good examples. I keep saying I need to go back. I mean, I need to play Celeste. I love Celeste for a lot of different reasons. One of the biggest ones for me is a game that is known for being difficult and is known for being kind of demanding of the player, but also is very good and intentional with their accessibility and difficulty settings.
Right.
So I definitely need to go back and play Celeste. And I also really need to play Undertale not on stream. This is a story I've told a couple times. Me streaming Undertale, this was a few years ago, was the single worst experience I've ever had streaming a game. Because for whatever reason, Undertale fans are rabid weirdos. People showed up immediately out of nowhere. People who had never been in my stream before, had never been since, to like spoil the game for me, like spoil the ending, spoil plot points, to, like tell me what to do. It is the single worst experience I've had with any game, and it's so weird. And I'm just like, I don't want to. I played the game, I enjoyed it well enough, but I'm like, I'm gonna play it again on my own time. I'm gonna let myself experience it, regularly, where I don't have to worry about nonsense and all of this.
Right.
Yeah, I've told a couple of streamers that, and they've been like, yeah, it's weird. People are really weird about it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what it is. People have a lot of feelings about it, and that's
they do have a lot of feelings. It pulls a lot of feelings, I heard about it. So yeah, don't do that again.
Yeah,
you should take that time for yourself and play that too. And I think it'll be a little bit more intimate and proper. And that way you don't have folks, being jerks.
Yeah, it's weird. It stands out because so on the scale of bad time streaming, it's like everything is like kind of, and then Undertale is just way so weirdly high. We're finally going to shift gears after whatever long ago I said we were going to shift gears. Well, sometimes I'm like, let's shift gears. Actually, I had more questions. Let's keep here actually, because I have more questions. But so you mentioned you've been playing games almost as long as you've been playing music, and we're gonna talk about your history with music. First, I want to know about your history with video games. Like, what's like the first video game you remember playing?
Dragonfire on the Intellivision.
I've never heard of this.
It is a very
video game name,
but it's fun. Yeah, it's cool. So the story is that my grandmother had in the spare bedroom, she had a box underneath this bed. Now, I'm probably in about second or third grade. And so I pull out this box and I look at the back of this box and I think to myself, okay, this is interesting. And I see all these little pictures. They're colors, but they're pictures. So I go to my grandmother and I say, Grandma, what is this? And she says, oh, it must be a fax machine. She's from Barbados, so I have this Bayesian accent, things like that. So it must be a fax machine or something. I was like, okay. So I go back to the box and look at the front. And it has a controller and it has these numbers on them, 1 through 9. I'm thinking, oh, okay. But this is the 90s. So I'm thinking, I've seen fax machines before, but maybe this is an old fax machine. But I still go back to the back of the box and I see these little pictures. And then I think, Well, I've never seen fax machines do color though. Like that's the key thing. So I opened it up, and by this time, I'm already hooking up stereo systems very well. My grandmother was asking me to do something that she would ask her brother to do, which would be my uncle. And so I hook it up, and I get it to work. And next thing I know, I'm playing Dragonfire on the television, and I'm having a good time.
I love that.
Yeah, that was my first game that I played. And then my cousin came up from Barbados, and he showed me Donkey Kong 94 on Game Boy. And then I begged my grandmother for a Game Boy, and then I got that. But then I headbutt the Game Boy on Airplane Stage 7 because it pissed me off, and I broke the Game Boy by headbutting it.
I've never heard of someone doing that, but also I think that's a perfectly fair response.
Bam!
The
screen is cracked, and I have to put this $80-$90 thing into the garbage. I'm watching in my room. I gotta put it because I don't know who could fix it at the time. I don't think nobody could fix it. Oh yeah. No, yeah, I broke some Game Boys. It's definitely things for that. But yeah, I got a lot of gaming stories. But those are the two games that I mostly introduced. And then my grandma bought me an N64. I didn't break that. I still have that to this day. It's the
I didn't
only
headbutt that one.
My childhood. Can't headbutt that one. I just ran my grandmother's phone bill up though. Hey, how do you get through the water temple on Ocarina of Time?
Oh my God, the water temple.
Mario helpline got you. And my grandma was like, "Why is my phone bill so high?" Sorry, Grandma. I just really wanted to get through it.
I remember I called the Nintendo helpline too when I was a kid. But when I called, so I called and it was busy. And then the helpful phone lady was like, "Hey, if you dial *9 or whatever, we'll stay on the line. And then when they pick up, we'll call you back." And I was like,
"Wait, what?"
Yeah, it was something. I was like, "Oh, that's helpful. That's great. Let's do that. *9 or whatever it was." Hang up, and then an hour goes by, something like that, right? And I'm a child, so the phone rings. I don't think anything about me getting a phone call because I'm a child. My mom picks up the phone and she's like, "Hello? What? Matt, did you call the Nintendo helpline?" Me playing Zelda. "Oh yeah, I did actually." And then she's like, and hands me the phone, and I'm like, "Yeah, how do I get through this part?" Okay, cool. How do the batteries on my Game Boy die really fast. What do I do? Okay.
For the help.
Okay, thanks. And I hand it back to my mom and I go back to playing. 2 weeks later, we get the phone bill, and that was $7. Because this is back when they charged you whatever the service to have somebody just wait on the line. They had to pay someone to do it.
Wait, so it was $7? You said
it was whatever it was. It was enough that it was a special line item on the phone bill. Wow. And my mom was like, "What's this? What's this right here?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't use the phone. What do you mean?" And she's like, "No, you called the Nintendo helpline. You remember?" So there was the $2, whatever it was, to call Nintendo, and then the $4 or $5 again, whatever it was, because I made somebody wait. Yeah. And I'll never forget, because people be like, "Yeah, it's so expensive to call the Nintendo helpline." I was like, I got you one better. I got you one better.
I don't know. You want to know how much my bill was?
Listen, Chase, I don't mean to be mean. You just gotta get better at video games, buddy.
You gotta get good. No, that's how I got good.
I called him. I said, "How do I do it?" Good.
It was only. Think about it though. I only called for the water temple. That game is huge. I didn't call for the mirror temple.
The water temple's nasty too.
The mirror temple's worse.
I saved in the middle of playing the water temple. I remember I spent a whole weekend at my friend's house, but he was playing Ocarina of Time, right? My buddy Rolly, who had the N64 and the PlayStation. So I was over at his house all the time. I came home and I got my parent. Yes. My parents got me Legend of Zelda. like, because I was at Rolly's house all the time, and so they bought me Legend of Zelda, and I was like, oh my god. And so I played a ton of it. I have like such a specific memory. I played it like all day, and then it was dinner time. So you're like, okay, you got to turn the game off. It's dinner time. I was in the middle of the water temple. I saved. I go back after dinner. For people who don't know Legend of Zelda, the main mechanic in the water temple is you're like raising and lowering the water level. So you're going through the different parts of the temple. I was somehow on the very top of the temple, but the water was all the way at the bottom. And me being however old I was like, I can't figure out how to get the water back so that I can progress. So I just never played Ocarina of Time again. I just can't. I was just like, well, I guess I can't play this anymore.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I probably could have fixed it if I'd spent like five more minutes or something like that.
No,
but
if you just called the hotline and got your phone bill to $60 to $80 like I did.
She's like, you should have spent the money like I did. But you called me.
My grandma's bill is only $60, $80 more. No big deal. Now, see, for me, what I didn't think, because my grandma's phone was, my mom would always call it. She's like, it's like Grand Central Station at her house. And the phone would always ring. She'd be on the phone for hours with people from Barbados, people from in Canada, people in like Washington. I mean, all over. So I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to call the hotline. I'm not thinking it's going to cost money because I know that those other things cost, like international calls probably cost way more. So, but yeah, no, $63 to $83 extra was pretty, that's a lot of money. Because my grandma didn't tell me she had calling cards to call those international calls. So I didn't think anything of it.
You're like, yeah, she calls Barbados all the time, whatever. It's not that big a deal.
I was thinking they call here all the time. What are we doing? Like, this is going to be okay. No, but actually, I was curious. Were you calling for Link's Awakening on Game Boy to get help? Because I could definitely understand that. That's a game I didn't finish when I was a child.
Oh man!
I had worked at Hollywood Video and someone helped me. Was that the game or was it Oracle of Ages and Seasons?
Oh man, no, it was. I had a Game Boy. That's the funny thing. I remember having a Game Boy. I had Pokemon. I had all 3 Pokemon games, and then I never got another Game Boy. I didn't know another Game Boy existed until I was in like high school and I saw the Game Boy Advance. They just never, somehow, I never saw that there was anything past the Game Boy.
You didn't see the Pocket? You didn't see the color?
No, apparently, somehow.
The Pocket was great.
In the weird way, when I look back and I'm just like, I never remember like asking for a new Game Boy. Like I got a Game Boy and I was like, great. And then just at some point,
you never asked for one. Okay, but we have 2 different paths. Yeah. If you already have it, then there's no reason to ask for, I guess, another. I'm sure the commercials, because those commercials were the best. But see, I broke all mine except the color one, so I had to ask. My grandma got me that one. I broke that. My dad got me the Pocket. I stepped on that. Empire Strikes Back is a very hard game. Empire Strikes Back is a very hard game. I tried not to step on it. I didn't accidentally step on it. I stepped on it. So headbutts and step-ons are my trajectory with Game Boys. But you know the funny story about this? I own almost all the Game Boys except for the Micro. So that's and they're all working.
I love that.
So that's the turnaround of this story, is that from broken to holding on to.
And they know what fate awaits them. So
well, I am in more control of things. I just put it down and think about it. I dream about thinking about it. I was like, man, I should play some of these and to go back and things like that too. But yeah, no. The fate of Game Boys.
I played Link's Awakening not that long ago. It was a good time.
You finished it too?
Yeah, the Game Boy one, yeah.
Yeah.
It was I had to look stuff up because there was definitely parts where I was like, where do you want me to go? What is this? And it's like, go talk to this guy. And I'm like, I never would have done that. Okay.
No, it's just some of the second dungeon puzzle I remember with the room with that like rabbit and other thing. I literally had to work at Hollywood Video. I had like a permit, was working at this time because it was too underage. And the person who was working there helped me. He was like, oh yeah, just do this. I was thinking, how does he know? But of course, he's way older than me, so he just could think that way. I was stumped. That's one I didn't call for. I should have called. But anyways, I didn't do it. But yeah, that was one I almost didn't finish, but then I ended up finishing it.
I love it. That's so, God, I love hearing stories about like what's like headbutting your Game Boy because of Donkey Kong. That's great. That's so good.
I'm shocked that you're the second person to laugh about it, because I'm thinking when it happened, it wasn't funny for me. I begged my grandmother for this thing and I broke it. I felt like ultimate shit.
It's one of those times you're just headbutting. You're like, oh no.
Yeah, it was that. Yeah, I was thinking, wait, I did that? It happened so fast. It was bam, one and done. Like, it wasn't like 2 or 3, just one knocker. That was it.
Those old screens. I remember my mom's original Game Boy, because she had the Game Boy before I did. She had Tetris. She would just play Tetris all the time.
Oh, I heard about that, yeah.
I was handing it to her. I was on the couch. I was handing it to her on the chair, like, diagonal. And then I dropped it and it fell this far, right? Like, just from, and the screen, the back of the screen exploded. Like it busted all the pixels. And I was just like, I don't even know what just happened. You know what I mean? Like that where something breaks and you're just like, I don't even know how this happened. I don't know how we got here. Later, they got me my own Game Boy. We went to Texas to see my family. I'm playing my Game Boy. I drop it 3 feet onto their driveway and it slides 2 feet down the driveway. And I'm like, I just broke my Game Boy. I'm going to have to just sit there the whole plane ride. Oh my God, what am I doing? The screen just like fell off. Just like the bezel, just the little screen was just like, meh. And I was like, okay, well, great. It worked. Yeah, I was like, but then I thought back to when I was like, how did you survive this? And that other one like exploded.
Just the right angle.
Yeah.
On that hard part, right?
I have like so clear memories. I have so few memories from my childhood, but like those two things specifically, that sound of it just like smacking the concrete and just like, and then just like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's like, you just glue it. It's fine.
Oh, you glued it? Okay.
Yeah, it was just because it was
didn't have the back. Yeah, I know what the border of the gray and stuff like that. But I've seen some. As you say that, I'm thinking in that time I've seen some without the screen. I always wonder, like, did they just, because children used to play and mark and do stuff and do all kinds of things, Sid stuff I call it, and Toy Story reference.
Yeah, you're just like, what is this? Oh, I broke it. No.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it's off. Yeah.
Yeah, like you do. Just yeah.
Good times.
I'm gonna think about that like tomorrow. It's just gonna pop in my head and I'm gonna laugh. It's so funny. It's just gonna bubble up tomorrow and I'm gonna be like, crazy.
The headbutt or the
headbutt? The
slip and slide Game Boy. Okay.
I think about that Game Boy. I think about that Game Boy falling all the time. That's one of those things that for whatever is like etched into my brain. I think whenever I'm like putting my phone in my pocket, I feel like my brain is like, don't.
Oh,
okay, good. Don't.
Of the shape. Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
I feel like my brain is always just like it had like that one terrible moment. It's like, nope. Okay, careful.
Extra grip on the phone into the pocket,
right into the pocket. What was the first video game? The first video game soundtrack that you really remember like grabbing you? That you were like, this is like more than just like, oh, like this is too whatever. You're like, this is music. This is an experience. Like this is part of this.
I don't know what came first, man. It's 3 games. I don't know which one came first, and I'm really thinking like, man, I wish I hoped. No, I didn't own that game. I think I got that one later. See, I'm really forcing myself to think because I have a lot of my childhood memories, and I really like this stuff because it's part of what refuels the passion in terms of like me keeping going for things. So that one, I'm getting close to the answer. So that one was this. I don't remember it. Now it's down to 2. It's going to be either between Batman Forever and Turok Battle of the Dinosaurs, which I always mention. And I've been mentioning it for over and over and over. I listen to at least Turok Battle of the Dinosaurs almost on a weekly basis because it's part of my video game workout playlist when I do my run. So Batman Forever on Game Boy. I think Tim Follin did the one on Sega Genesis, but I think that the other composer had. What was cool, what I loved about that, and I wish this kind of still existed, is that it can't really on consoles, but it can for some retros, is that when you had a licensed game and you had different ones like Super Nintendo, Sega, and Game Boy at the time, and Game Gear, like all those four, and probably Lynx too if they had different licensed ones, depending on the studio that worked on it, it wouldn't be the same studio to do all four. So they choose different studios, and depending on that studio, you have a different team. So it allowed other work for other people, which was amazing. That doesn't typically happen anymore. If you get a licensed game today, that studio does all the ports, or that one studio does ports for all the same game, which I guess then the porting gets work, but then the studio just makes and develops that game. But that's not how it was back in the day. And so the composer who worked on the Game Boy version, I think, had copied close to what Tim Follin did, and it was incredible. I still tried to transcribe that when I was at community college in Finale, which was terrible, to get some of the notes that was played on that. And specifically, it's Batman Forever, not the second stage from One in the Circus. That shit goes hard. It just starts in this eerie like type of form, like arpeggiated form, and then it ramps up like with these chords, like like I just can't I can't even sing it right, but it just gets intense. Like it's got this fugue type of feeling, but in like not cheery Bach, like dark Bach, like not even that other memed up Bach. Like just no, we're just gonna make this shit sound good. And so there's that. But for an original piece of music, Alberto Gonzalez, that man can write. And he's known for a lot of stuff that he's done for those things. And those games, like he did Smurfs thing on Game Boy and Asterix on Sega and stuff like too. But he was brilliant because I think he was in his early teens, early 20s, no older than like 22 at most, I would think. And his sonic ability to be able to create the stuff that he did, because he's posted about it on Twitter X, and he's even followed me and responded to me, and I'm honored because I'm thinking like, oh, I grew up with this. This is one of my favorite composers. It's just like he showed how he was doing it from those systems. And it's still, it translates on every system. Like, it sounds good anywhere you put that thing on. I was listening, it sounds good in the car, it sounds good on the phone. It doesn't matter. It sounds good everywhere. That's amazing. It sounds good. It feels good. It fit the game. That's masterful. I'm sorry. This is just incredible to me. So that was for that I remember on the Game Boy. My dad had a PlayStation, so I played on that. For me, then it moved into Tomb Raider 1996 on PlayStation for Nathan McCree to create the symphonic sound that he did for that orchestral form of Tomb Raider was that. And then on Sega Genesis, just hearing, most people love Koshiro-san's music for Streets of Rage. I love his music for Beyond Oasis, to a point where I even wrote an article about it, and then that got me a follow for him on like some years ago, and I was honored about that. I'm thinking, because he knows, like, not everybody talks about this, and you transcribed it, and you did this, you wrote this whole article. I'm like, yeah, I love this shit. So those are my experiences that I was like, yeah, this is the music. This is great music.
I love hearing people talk about video game music. I have what I describe as a weird relationship with video game music, where for the longest time, I would not listen to the games. Like, I would turn the volume down and I would just play the games. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't, I know what you mean, yeah. Yeah, I didn't engage with the games in that way. And so it's interesting, and I don't know if this is like a universal experience. So this is one of those things where I don't want to say like people do this. I feel like there is I feel like the amount of people who like really respect and pay attention to video game composers is a lot smaller than the amount of people who play a game overall.
Yeah.
And so it's a thing I've made a conscious effort to do the last couple years is like,
thank you.
Listen to music, like intentionally so, right? Not just like, oh, I'm playing the game, whatever, but like listen to the music, understand like the themes, like, you know, try to like connect with the music separate from the game. And so I was honestly very surprised that your example was that early, because I wouldn't think like, oh, what's a good video game soundtrack? I don't think I would pick anything from the Game Boy. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I wouldn't think like, oh yeah, the Game Boy, it's got the little MIDI chip, like whatever, what's it gonna make?
But see, what do I talk about earlier in the show? I talked about Sonic Identity, and Sonic Identity came from limitations. So while you're saying, what is this going to make from the thing? That's how I'm able to understand. I took that same ideology and I've applied it into my work, and that's where it came from.
Yeah, and it makes me excited to, because I remember I had a Batman game for Super Nintendo. It wasn't Batman Forever, because I looked up like what did Batman Forever on the Super Nintendo look like, and it wasn't that game. And I think it was Batman Returns or something.
Batman Returns.
Right. It was either Batman or Batman Returns.
I think it was just Batman. Yeah.
And I remember that game having music that was like very engaging. It was like, oh wow, this is like movie music.
Yeah, they went. I think Sunsoft, that team of composers went hard. I've heard that from other podcasts. Like people really love that soundtrack from that game. They really like it.
That's so. Yeah, I was very surprised that your example was that early. So I'm curious now. I gotta go check that out
on Game Boy, because the Sega doesn't sound the same. Big Love to Tim Foley is one of my favorites, but the Game Boy one, the second stage of that, it's something to behold. I love
like part of doing these interviews almost always gives me like homework. Like it always gives me something to like, oh, they mentioned this. I either I've never heard of this, or like you know, Batman for Game Boy, like, oh, I didn't like consider that this would be that interesting sounding. So I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna check out Batman Returns on the Game Boy.
Speaking of homework, I have a question for you.
Oh, hit me with it.
Because you just mentioned something. So did you listen to the Ground Zero soundtrack? And if so, what did you think?
I listened to the theme song. I did not listen to it as much as I probably would like to. But I have a very busy like 2 days right now. So this was a bad time for like let me sit down and try to engage with Chase's stuff before the interview. I have a lot of things on my plate that I didn't before. But no, I sadly did not get a chance to listen to as much as I would have liked to.
No, I appreciate you being transparent. I was curious because that's something I just kind of want to know now, like with people's thoughts that haven't totally familiar with my work, but especially since we're talking about this, then they kind of get the idea, because then I would know where it fits outside of my world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I was like, I should sit down and listen to the Ground soundtrack and get an idea of the like the vibes, and then listen to a Ground Zero, and then see, you know, because like I said earlier, I thought they were like really different. So I was like, oh, we'll see how different they are. And
they're really different. It's just that I'm good at hiding things, and I'm creating Easter eggs for people. The way I write is that I don't want people to be bored. I don't want people to play the games with the music off. I'm passionate about. I got into this and it's worked, and it seems in alignment with me giving something great to the world that I can provide sonically well, not only within the art form, but externally as well to whatever's going on in your life outside of that, which is what has been shown to me, helping people through depression, to helping through people through war times.
Keeping in video games for the next little bit. I swear to God, we're going to talk about music. I swear. This is Chase. He's a music composer. Never talk about music. Never talk about music. Just never bring it up. What are you playing now? Like, what's the most recent couple video games you've been playing?
I've been playing Rengoku on PSP, and I've been playing Chess Master on PSP.
Rengoku is one of the funniest things you could have said.
I'm all full of surprises. When people don't think that I'm going to say something, I don't
think I would have expected anyone to say Rengoku.
You know what it is?
Yeah. Oh, I love the PSP. I love the PSP. I talk about the PSP all the time. I love the PSP. I love it too. And like, even for a PSP game, Rengoku's one of the funniest things you could have said. I watched a YouTube video. I watched a YouTube video about it not that long ago because they had the box art, and I was like, "Oh, I remember seeing that game." But I never played it. I was like, "What was this game?" And I remember sitting there watching it. I was like, "This looks terrible, but probably amazing."
I've never played it. I have a lot because the way I study games obviously is because I play, and so I have a collection I'm trying to get through because I have a thing I want to do if I come back to streaming, whereas I'm going to show people how to get through their backlog. I came up with a formula. So Rengoku has been growing on me. I force myself when I go on trips to play a game because I'm on the plane, kind of like you were like, I'm going to play this Game Boy for the time. And so I was on it and I was off of it. But I said, like, I'm going to learn this. So on my recent trip to GDC, I forced myself to really learn the mechanics of the game and get good at it in terms of like progressing through, because like I said, I was on and off. And then I got it within less than an hour because I wasn't far from where I had to go, which is pretty quick. So I thought, okay, good. I got it down. I understand. And it grew on me. I'm stuck at a specific boss, but I'm not going to look things up because I like to challenge my mind to think about what I need to learn from the game. And so now I at least know, like, I have the full case and I have the manual, thankfully. So I'm like, okay, because I self-taught it without reading the manual. I just hopped right in. And I got that far. I got far hopping in without reading the manual. So now I'm going to go and like read the manual, but I'm not going to look it up because I like the game that much. It's fun. It runs. It's weird. It's Japanese and all those good things, right? Because they just think differently and think well. And that's what I kind of really enjoy. So they had Rengoku, and I'm glad that you got a big tickle out of it too.
That's so, gosh, I don't think I would have guessed Rengoku in like 100 guesses. That's so funny.
Yeah, probably not. And the PSP library, as we know, we both love it, is like really great. I mean, I was one point in time, a year or so ago, I was playing Exit. Do you know that game?
Oh yeah, yes. Exit.
Oh. Yeah. Really great music too, and really good challenge. Another game I don't look up anything, and I'm getting through it. And I'm feeling good about not looking. I'm like, yeah, I figured that shit out. Hell yeah! Like, I'm still not done with the game. I've been playing it for over a decade. I still haven't, but I'm on stage 7 now of the actual stages. But I got to obviously do 10 of them, and then I'll move to stage 8 or whatever. But yeah, I love it. So yeah, Rengoku was what I'm playing right now too.
That's just so fun because there's so many games you could have said that would have been like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. It's a very reasonable game. You could have been like, oh, I'm playing Monster Hunter Wilds. I just finished the new Final Fantasy VII remake or whatever.
No. Well, that's probably not gonna
playing fucking Rengoku on the Do you have a PSP or are you playing it on a Vita?
No, I have both. I have a Vita, but I'm playing on the PSP, my PSP 1000, which I think I might have to either fix because you haven't played it yet. So Rengoku, you have these mechanics whereas you use the joystick, but to do different things to learn the mechanics properly, you have to use the D-pad. And my D-pad is gone. So I might have to buy another PSP, which is good because I haven't bought one since my first one I bought it, obviously it was used, but it was in 2009. I think it came out in like 2005, 2006. So I bought it in 2009, used. I've had it for that long. So if I got to get another one just to finish through the game, I'm happy to do it. It's so great.
I love the idea. I'm very tickled by the idea of you having to buy a new PSP in 2025 because you need to finish Rengoku.
I got to. I like it that much, or I'll have to open. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to open up my PSP. I retro refurbish games and consoles, but I'm not opening that thing up. That thing is going to be intense. So I will just buy another one. I modded it when I got it, and that was as much as I could do. I love that thing. So yeah, no.
You keep it in case you decide eventually you want to, but you're like, I'm going to get a new one. I'm going
to get a new one because I can still play the other games that are not so D-pad heavy. I can still play Exit. I can still play Chess Master and what is it? What was the game I was playing on there a year ago? Getting the Crisis Core.
Oh,
that might be joystick heavy. Yeah, I'll get into the PSP. No big deal.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine. You should. You should get a PSP as a treat.
Yes,
everyone should buy a PSP.
My dad tries to get over. He's like, I'm not a gamer. I said, okay, Dad. I said, yeah, you're a game player, and I'm going to tell you why. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I was like, he's just a Chicago police officer for 28 years, so he's like, I'm not, doing this. I said, okay, Dad, that's some bullshit. Number one, you bought a PlayStation, and when I was a child. You bought it. You had it. And you had you didn't have just one game. You bought Tomb Raider, you borrowed Resident Evil, you were playing Tekken, and then you didn't want to play that anymore because I beat his ass 13 times and he never won, so he never played it again. He was playing Lay the cop, and I was playing Law, and Law was laying down the law with Lay, even though Lay works with the law. So that didn't happen. But here's the thing that I got him even more further on. I said, then I find out years later, after PlayStation, you bought a PSP. You bought it. You bought it. That's not, I'm playing Candy Crush on your phone. Not only did you do that, Dad, but you bought Tiger Woods Golf on PSP, and you maxed the character out. You're a game player. It was untenable. He couldn't say anything.
No, you don't own a PSP unless you're a gamer. That's right. An intentional purchase. You don't buy a PSP.
It wasn't like you got it from your brother or something or anything. You bought it and you maxed the character out.
Rengoku.
Two things you love about this: headbutts on Game Boys and Rengoku on PSP.
I cannot wait to tell my PSP sicko friends. I'm gonna be like, I did the interview today. You will never guess the game that he's playing right now. And
I get extra points for this.
This is impressive. I wish I had a game. I would hire you to score the game based purely on the fact that you played Rengoku. I would be like, he knows games. He knows it. Who else do I need?
See? Yes, that's, and I'm not doing that as a friend. It's like, that's really me. Like, that's what I love, is like that, the connection with that, because you would be the developer. That's happened before. Whereas I worked on a game and they loved it even more because I played a game that most people wouldn't know, and it was Future Tactics, and that music is incredible too. And they're like, wait, you know Future Tactics? I'm like, oh yeah, when you go into this thing, you do the thing, and so you get to connect with people who play games, who make games. Like, that's the whole point of being a video game composer.
Oh, okay. I've seen this cover. Okay, I looked up Future Tactics. I was like,
you gotta play it.
I was like, that has tactics in the title, so I have to know what it is.
You gotta play it. It's one of those, I'm not gonna like this game, and then you like the game. You're like, I can't put this shit down.
That's just how it used to be. Like, there would just be a game, that your friend had, that no one had ever heard of. And you're like, oh, I used to go to my friend's house and play this all the time. And people would be like, I've never heard of this game. You made that game up. And you're like, no, this is a real game.
It's a real game, I promise. I'm not lying.
And now I feel like we just have an embarrassment of riches compared to then,
True. I was going to say it to you, too. I was really proud of this. I wanted to tell you, because we were talking about like how friends might have some things. Like I call him my brother because my best friend. He was the one who had like all the stuff. He had a Jaguar. He got a Sega Genesis. He had a Sega Game Gear. And I was on 1505 in the high rise in Chicago, and he was 1509. So I got to sometimes see him go down the way. But what I loved about I don't know how I did this. And it's funny because nowadays with retro game hunting, people are now catching on. But in my childhood, I didn't, like, my grandma already spent the money for the N64. So to get games, like $20, not $20, like $60 games, $70 games back then when people were complaining about it. Now I was like, no, those games were expensive. Ocarina of Time, I didn't get that game. I think it was like an $80, $70 game. Mm-hmm. I went to the pawn shop up the street, like a block up from where I was, and bought Ocarina of Time for $20. I had an allowance, so I had $20, and that's how I got Ocarina of Time. I was so proud of myself at the time, thinking I got this cool game, and then I felt really good about it because I didn't have to ask my grandma to buy me an expensive game anymore. So yeah, I was resourceful even at that young age. Just pulling nowadays, like I said, people are going to pawn shops, thrift stores, and doing all the other stuff, of course. But back then, nobody thought to buy video games from them back then. I was smug as a rug coming out of that pawn shop with a toy. I remember that feeling. It's so great.
That.
Yeah, I still have that copy to this day.
That's great. I love like hearing about people's like retro game collections and like stuff from their childhood that like meant something to them. Like I've said this before, like multiple places, like for a lot of reasons, I don't have anything from my childhood at all. Like I have almost nothing.
Would have been cool to have the slip inside Game Boy still though.
I have just the screen. That's all that survived. But so I always love hearing people talk about the things that matter to them that they hung on to. Like even if it's something like silly or like super random like that, where it's just like, you know, like, oh, I don't have a Nintendo 64, but I have this copy of Ocarina of Time that I bought. Like the first game I bought with my money. This is what, you know.
Yeah.
It's always
I think it's important.
It's interesting the things that stick with you, you know, that you think back on and you're like, this was a thing. This was a moment in my life.
I think for me, when I decided I was going into the game industry, it meant more because I knew I didn't know how far I was going to get, but I knew that I was going to take it seriously, and everything that I had going forward was going to have a story and something tied to my career in that respect. And so it was important for me, for anything that I had in the past and going forward in the career, that I cherished it and I took care of it and I valued it. And what I learned from other people was that they also have their own stories, and there's some nostalgia, and no matter what age they're at for them too, but there's also history involved versus it being a video game historic moment or a historic moment in their own life. And like I remember hearing a story about someone whose life was saved because they didn't go to a liquor store when there was a shooting. They decided to play Bloodborne just a little bit longer. I bet you they probably would keep that copy of Bloodborne.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of wild starter here, is thinking, wait, if he decided to go to that store, he would have possibly been killed, but he decided he was going to play Bloodborne just a little bit longer. It didn't go, and then he found out that thing happened. That's it's crazy. So this little stories like that, and I've got many others, and we'll be here for like hours talking about those things, but that's what I think is important for it. So that's really why I think that's why I keep those games and those consoles so near and dear to my heart and take care of them.
Do you ever go you know, when you've finished a composition, you sent it off, right? The game comes out, whatever. Do you ever go back and like play them and like experience like, oh, here's my work, like in it, like in context, here's the game, here's all the music, here's how it all goes?
No, not anymore. I used to. I think I stopped doing that. It was for certain projects though, actually. And it's because I'm playing the game so much while I'm writing it in the implementation form, or within when I'm sending, if I'm what they call it being an asset canon, or if I'm doing implementation. If I'm doing implementation, I'm definitely not playing it because I know, how it's going to fit and where it's going to fit. So I've already achieved it. What I enjoy is seeing others play it in that outside of it, because I get to be the game player again. I don't have to be the video game composer, because I was a game player first. Even though I was writing music on Game Boy Camera, which was technically my first video game composition things, but I get to be part of where it started from in that regard. And so, I haven't played through too many of them that much, but it doesn't mean I won't do it again. I think it's just going to depend on whatever the project is. But man, when you're with it so much, you kind of already understand like how it's going to feel.
That makes sense. Yeah, and if you're playing it as part of developing the compositions and all of this, like you played it, like you're like, okay, I don't need to go and do it again.
Yeah, I know what's going to happen. I think give me an idea. Maybe I should kind of do. If I'm to be honored again for some things like that, I would just, or if I had time and just go and actually play the game with it in context, but probably won't be able to finish it. I think I tried this with the Ground because the Ground was my first console release. And I got to play it on Switch, I got to play it on PlayStation, and I got to play it on Xbox. And that was a really cool feeling because that's what was one of my goals going into the career, is that I at least wanted to have multiple console games, but it's incredibly hard. Again, it comes down to the mentality of who you're working with to get you to that point. They got to want to invest in themselves, invest in others, finish the game, release the game and then get it to that point. Like, those are a lot of steps for people, and some people just don't have the aptitude. So if you're in alignment with that and you get fortunate to be on those multiple times, then you're able to kind of get there. And so I could probably just go back and play a couple of different games on Steam and see how far I get and things like that too. But I might also feel that feeling of, oh yeah, I kind of played that, but I don't know. Maybe I should try it.
The perfect segue there with the mention of the Game Boy camera. We're finally going to talk about your history with music. Cool. We did it. We made it.
Okay.
Yes. I was going to say, you know, what was like the start of you composing, but spoiler alert, it has to do with the Game Boy camera. So let me hear this story.
Yeah. So Game Boy camera and the Game Boy Pocket, I think, was announced, and I was fortunate to get a Game Boy camera. And I love that thing. That thing has so many cool tunes, so many cool intricacies of parts you can do, mini games. And within one of the mini games, you could do like this little DJ thing. So, you know, you take a picture of your face. Game Boy camera is the first selfie. So that's kind of, you know, one cool thing that you can do. And then you can do a little DJ, and you can do this little wiki little thing on the ones and twos for that. But if you press select, it opens up and it has a sequencer, and you can choose the waveforms, and you can choose the noise channel, because there's 3 channels. And the Game Boy has a 2A03 chip, which is the 3 channels. So they brilliantly put in something that utilizes the actual chip to play back what you've already written within that spot. So you could DJ some pre-existing songs, they had that on there, or you could make your own and then go out of it and then do a little face wiki thing on the little thing and slow the tempo down and slow it up. But when I discovered that you could write your own music on there, I went banana cats. It was so much fun. And then I think from there, I know I got a computer in 2001, and then I moved on to Fruity Loops 3. But then I was also on MTV Music Generator on the PlayStation. And one of my close friends, kind of like my second brother, is like Kevin. We played that and made different music things on that. But mostly when I was doing, like, the first thing I ever made on Fruity Loops 3, I burned a CD and took it from a CD player and went to the bus stop, and this girl named Tasha at the bus stop listened to it. And the first thing she said to me as she took off the headphones says, "It sounds like it should be in a video game." And I'm thinking, okay, and that was not the genre I was going for. I was not thinking that at all. I had no clue. I thought it was insulting at the time. I was thinking, how dare you? Like, what is this? If I knew, though, if I just had that book that I always relate to about The Complete Guide to Game Audio by Aaron Marks, second edition, if I had that book back then and she said that, I'd be rich right now. I'd be rich. I know I'd be rich because I already had the sound.
You were like, I did it. I would have just done video game music. I made it.
Did what was in the book, and what I did later, 10 years later, and yeah, I'd probably be one of the youngest video game composers at that time. I really do believe that, though. I really do.
With the Game Boy camera, was that your first experience, like, composing music on a sequencer like that, or?
Yes, on a sequencer, yes. But I was writing music when I had an alto saxophone my dad had got me, and I got sick of playing Hot Cross Buns and A Wild Rose and all the other things I had to do for band. So I didn't know what I was doing at the time until I was in college, and it was called transcribing. But I would just turn on the jazz station in Chicago, and I would just transcribe this one jazz song by ear. And my dad didn't know what sheet music was. I didn't know what sheet music was. Like blank sheet manuscript paper. I knew what actual sheet music was, read, but I didn't know what manuscript sheet music paper was. And so I would just write down the letter notes because I knew what they were, and I knew what they were on the saxophone. So I just hear it, and I'd find the note, and then I just write it down, and then I do that. And then from there, I would just make up my own stuff, because then I know, I just have to just write different letters, and I can do this and do that. Now that I think about it, I tried to make manuscript paper. This memory just came to me just now. But I had it because we had, you had paper in school that you had to write on. Mm-hmm. It's kind of weird to say because I know the children of this day and age just have computers. So
you know how when we were in school they gave you paper, and we used rocks in pieces of wood to etch on.
Hieroglyphics.
Yeah, we
kind of wild start to say.
We inscribed these symbols that meant words.
I really have to thank you because I was going through. I have that memory all the time. Like, oh no, I didn't know what it was. I did know, but the paper was. I had to make it, and the notes were so large because it wasn't staff paper. It was actual, work paper that you have, school paper or whatever that you had to write words on, not sheet music notes. So I drew big half notes and whole notes, and I think that got ugly. So I moved to the letters, and that's how because it was quicker to read. I was like, AE, rather than me trying to make big staff paper on the paper that didn't make sense. But yeah, I did try that. Yeah, so I tried to do some things that I wasn't technically taught about, but mimicked. And didn't know what I was doing, and I was only in 5th grade. So that means I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
And see, this is the thing. Like, I feel like every really artistic person has that story of just like, yeah, and this is when I did this, I did this incredible thing of like, I would just listen to the radio and write down, I would just transcribe the music by ear, NVD, the thing we all did in 5th grade. I would sit with my saxophone, listen to the jazz station, and just write down the music as we do. And meanwhile, I'm like, I couldn't do that now. If and you're like, look, don't forget a manuscript paper. Like, I don't think I could do that now if you gave me like an hour and a cheat sheet. It's so fun hearing people's stories. It's so amazing. And it's not, hey, I don't want people to think that like I think I'm stupid or anything like that. I don't think I'm stupid. I just know that like my brain is over here. Right. Yeah. And other people and like more artistic people are over here. We are in different spaces. That's all it is. I can respect what people are doing over here. Right. I have a different skill set, and that's fine.
Set of skills.
Yeah. What was the first like your first composition? Not like your first video game composition. Like, oh, this is my first professional thing. What was the first thing that you were like, I'm going to compose a work that like, and then was like something that had an intention and then had like an end of a project.
Really good question, and one I haven't been asked before, so that's why it's really good. Oh, you know what? Actually, it's on my YouTube channel. So, yeah, I mean, it's game related, but it wasn't. It didn't go anywhere. It was just happened to be. Okay, it's 2 of them. Can I answer with 2 of them?
Yeah. Okay. Just get real strict out of nowhere. No. Pick one.
Pick one.
Like, why? So.
I heard that Joshua Trank, the director of Chronicle, which is really one of my favorite movies, was going to be the director for Shadow of the Colossus movie. So this must have been 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. One of those ranges of the years. I can't think of it. And I thought, I'm writing for that. I love that fucking score. I'm writing for it. I don't give a shit how long I got to get this thing done. I'm going to write for it. And I had no clue about how to write orchestral music the proper way. I had no experience in terms of, I knew what an orchestra was, but I didn't know about the families. I wasn't a conductor's assistant yet. I didn't know shit about sample libraries and its strengths, its weaknesses, and all a bunch of stuff that I had definitely took time to know, but I just went right in. I was like, oh, Symphonia? Boom. Okay, we're going to make this happen. And I'm just going to figure it out. And yeah, that was the one I wrote from it took a long time, but I was adamant about. I had problems finishing. That's why it was hard to answer. Was because a lot of work I didn't finish, and one of the reasons I got into games was because I figured people finish stuff. Little did I know.
Well,
the joke's on me over here. But some people do, obviously, are already to be almost 30 games in, right? So I'm very fortunate about that. But that was my initial thought, is that I was looking at. I didn't see a lot of like independent games at the time when I was coming into it. It was all like all the AAA stuff, and those stuff was being finished. I could play it, so it must be finished. So I got into that so I could finish something, and that was part of the thinking of, all right, I'm going to have this so I can submit this so I can be considered to be the composer for Shadow of the Colossus, the movie. Big love to Atani-san, who was the original composer of Shadow of the Colossus. Is phenomenal work. I wouldn't dream of trying to reach that of those sorts, but I wanted to shoot the shot regardless, because if you don't do, you don't try, you don't know. So that was the piece of work that I did, and thankfully I had a colleague. My third type of person is a close friend of mine. I related with my brother, Mike Daniels. He knew orchestral music very well, so he gave me pointers and tips in terms of how to make it better and be fine. And so I did finish it, and it went on my demo reel on my YouTube channel, which is still there to this day. The second thing was I was frustrated with how and whoever decided to cut the music to the Tomb Raider that came out on PlayStation 3. I have big issues with people. These companies don't name stuff, so I have to put either a year to it. Like God of War does this shit, Spider-Man did this shit, and it frustrates me because I'm trying to explain something to you or people who are listening, and they have to kind of do extra work to kind of know what I'm talking about. Because if I say Tomb Raider 1996, then you know that. But before then, it was like that's something else. So I think it's Tomb Raider 2013, but it's on the PS3 for sure and Xbox 360. They cut this trailer with two pieces of music that I felt didn't tell the story well. And I think I just finished the Shadow of the Colossus thing finally. I think it took me 2 years to finish. It was a long time. I almost didn't think I was going to finish it. But this one, I told myself, as tired as I was, I went to school full-time, part-time, and I had a job that was part-time. So both things were part-time. I was tired as hell. But I told myself, I'm going to write for an hour every night. So from 10:30 to 11:30 at night, I wrote beyond the 4 bars. I wrote sections of pieces to rewrite to tell the story of the Tomb Raider 2013, because it just didn't flow. And I did that from start to finish. And that was the piece of music I got that done, I think within definitely less than a month. It might have taken me 2 weeks at most, because I was so strict about no matter how tired I was after work, I'm writing. And I did it. And I even got feedback from a colleague that comments on my work to this day. He's a big AAA composer, Jeff Broadbent. He gave me my first demo feedback on that piece and liked it back then. And that's on my YouTube channel as well, as the revision, what is it called? The rescore of the Tomb Raider 2013 trailer.
I love the excitement, of you, oh, they're making a Shadow of the Colossus movie. Oh, I'm gonna do that. I just gotta make music for it. And then when they hear I love that. I love the certainty. I just gotta make it. I just gotta make it and submit it, and then I'll do it. And because I love the passion in that project, right? It's clear how much you loved the game. It's clear how much you loved the music. And you're like, I need to be a part of this. And that goes to, I don't know if I've cut it, so I'll mention it again. I was talking about the sort of trick with having started this podcast. And when I was interviewing Darren, talking about tricking yourself into starting something and keeping that momentum going. And it's a very similar thing of just oh, I'm going to make this. And like you said, you're I didn't have any of this experience that I should have had. I didn't, I would go on to learn all of these things that would be so helpful, but you were so passionate. You were so excited. You were just nope, here we go. Music. Ha. I love it. it's very funny to hear it like of you from the future telling back like I didn't have any of this. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this. I did it. All right. Oh well. Like that's I think it's so important to look back at creative processes and stuff. Like I know I do this with streaming. And I do this like, you know, when I'm editing the podcast, this is me all the time where I go like what was I thinking here? Why did I do this? Why did I do this way? And I actually, this is a great time to bring up. You mentioned that like you take notes during your composition process. And I think like that's such a smart idea because I like when I look back at old stuff, I would actually love to know like, what was I thinking? What did I think this was going to do? What did I think? Why did I do this way when now it makes so much more sense to me to do it this way? You know, what did I think the benefit was? What problem was I trying to solve? Does that come up a lot in when you're taking your notes? Like, and you know, so like when you did a ground zero, like, did you look back and go like, oh yeah, that's right. Like I named it, I didn't name it song 1. And so that's why we didn't have those problems.
The notes are for a twofold purpose. As we get older, I've realized life goes many different ways, semi-quickly and sometimes not. But we learn, or we choose to learn, some of us, certain things, and it's at a rapid pace now. So I can't hold everything in my mind as best as I used to before. And so I'm trying to mostly solve things early. I'm trying to solve things in the moment. So if I forget, I can go back and I don't have to struggle. So it's basically just teaching myself to not work harder. The second part of that is that a lot of people, what I have discovered also is because of the way I think, I would like the journals to be published or at least experienced at like the Video Game Music Foundation so that people could learn 100 years or so from now, if human time is still around, how I, as a video game composer, thought and what I learned and how I did things on specific game projects. And what I loved about hearing, and I think Phil and Frank from the Video Game Foundation, or Historic Foundation, is that they have those things from different projects that didn't release and then have that, you know, from the era of games that we grew up with. But I think it's also going to be important for this era that's happening right now too. And I have all that documented. So that's the two-part form, is that I'm learning, I'm documenting it so that I can know what's happening in real time, because if I didn't, then I know I would forget. And when I would do these interviews, I would think, what was it like? Or what did it do? And then because I learned so much, and I'm on to the next one, I'm moving on to things because I got to take care of the things. But then I'm also solving problems that I don't have to work hard for in the future if they come up again. But then also other people can see how I thought very in a raw form in the moment. Because when I have it, it's mostly, it came to me, I have to go and write it down. It's like a journal entry, typically. And this is what's going on, and this is why I did this, and this is this is the chord progression, or this is what's happening. It's just a twofold process that's going on there.
I love that. Like, and I love that you brought up Phil and Frank. I love the Video Game History Foundation. I've been screaming about them for years. I love the work that they're doing, not only as a foundation, but the new archive site and all that stuff that's available. Yeah. And I'm with you 100%. I wish more of the sort of I don't even know what to call it, like behind the scenes ephemera, you know, like the stuff that I'm sure thousands of pages of notes and ideas and concepts and processes that are developed every single game were maybe not explicitly in a historical context shared, but were more commonly shared as a community aspect to, to say like, hey, we made this game. Here's all of the stuff, you know, that we thought of and concepted and wrote and produced, so that if you're making your game, you can go look at all of this stuff that we wrote down, and you can learn something from that, or you can understand why we did this over this, or you can understand why we went with this solution as opposed to whatever, why we made our engine as opposed to going to whatever.
Right.
I mentioned earlier, you know, I've interviewed a ton of TTRPG people and a thing that's come up again and again is community knowledge share. And and that's the same thing. You know, a lot of people have talked about like, oh, you know, you need such and such. Like if you want somebody to help set up with a Kickstarter, or if you want to set up like printing something like this, you know, like this is how many copies, this is where, whatever, having that knowledge available, especially for people that are like, it's not theoretical stuff, right? It's, I made a game, we shipped it, here it is, you can play it. Here's the process from it. You know, it's not, you know, I'm somebody just in my bedroom sketching stuff out, which has its own value, but it's like there's more value and more kind of concrete stuff for people who have made a game and it's out and it's available, it's complete and it's accessible in that way. So yeah, I would love if that was a more common thing, especially in the indie scene, because I think there's so much effort spent in the production process of games that, like, how much less could it be if people were more free with, you know, more available with their knowledge? And I'm sure there's all kinds of reasons why they aren't, you know, I'm sure there's legal reasons. I'm sure there's any number of reasons. I don't know them. I don't work in game development. I'm going to assume that there are, because people don't do it. So I'm going to assume there's a reason.
One thing that I learned on an interview is a industry colleague named Masao. He said, most of the problems that we think we have been solved already. And then I think he left it there mostly. And so my mind thought was like, oh yeah, you just got to look for the answer. And so from there, I've always had that in the forefront of my mind. I always knew that, but when someone says something in a sentence form, I always feel like words unlock worlds. And it was just the sentence structure that was there forward that amplified me, mostly exponentially accelerating my thought process of problem solving even more than I was before I even heard that. Because I always instinctively did it, but I believed more because someone thought like me in that regard and said it actually out loud.
It's a thing that I always keep like in the back of my mind when I'm talking about games or you know, giving my opinion, or when I'm playing something and I'm being, you know, my little push my glasses up game critique, is I always try to keep in mind the idea that, like, there's a reason it is this way, right? If I'm playing a game and a system works a certain way, or they design something a certain way, there's a reason it's this way. They didn't make the game to be bad. Mm-hmm. You know, they didn't say, you know, what would be really funny is if this happened. It would be funny if it was bad, right? They made it a certain way intentionally. They made it that way on purpose. And then maybe that's not the way you want it to work, or maybe there is a better way that you could conceive of it working, but maybe that way can't work because of any number of reasons. You know, maybe it doesn't work with whatever middleware they were using. Maybe it doesn't work with the engine they were using. Maybe they ran out of time and they couldn't implement it that way, so they implemented it the way that they could quickly. Like, one of my favorite game tidbits was when Todd Howard talked about Oblivion during the loading screens, that they would actually reboot the Xbox during those loading screens. That's nutty. That's incredible. Yeah. Like, that's one of those things where you're like,
it's brilliant things. Yeah.
Like, you did what? And it's like, yeah, it was just so much easier for us to like suspend the Xbox and suspend the game and then reboot it to flush the RAM. So then we can, and I'm like, that's amazing. And I wonder, like, who else could have benefited to know. Yeah,
exactly. And so on the higher level, those things, those brilliant, they attract those people who are very intelligent, and they hold on to them, and then they get them under NDAs because obviously it's competitive. But man, if you had been to some of the talks and things that I've been to, I think there was a game, I want to say it's not Sunset Overdrive, it was another one, and it's part of like a circular studio that did stuff. But they did stuff with loading screens that I would have never thought that they could be doing besides rebooting the system. And there's other things I've heard, like for Steam audio, that typically has happened for other things, and just like from interviews to being in the room about presentations that you would never think stuff like that happens, and how these minds work together and their teams and stuff like that. It's inspiring completely. And that's why I always say, I say like, yeah, get the art out there, because it's artists inspiring artists continuously, and that's what it gets better and it gets better. And like you said, we could have helped each other for those things, and those higher ups, it doesn't happen. But the smaller, that's why I'm such an advocate to try to get my work into the History Foundation, is that, like, yeah, please look at this and acknowledge it, because even though it's not this big AAA game or this super popular game, it still matters. And what I saw from them highlighting the work of the first women programmer who made several games, and I'm remiss from forgetting her name, but she was amazing for the time in like the 70s and the 80s for getting that stuff. But it's not like she was super well known, but they went back and they looked at those things and they're still highlighting. So that's why I think it's important that at all levels, it's still, the information could be good for anybody.
It's the argument I always have when people talk about game preservation. You know, I'm like, yeah, like we should work to preserve every game. Like every game that comes out is art. Every game that comes out is a work of art made by a group of people. You know, it's the effort of whoever many people, like it should be preserved. And people are always like, well, what about, and I'm like, nah. What did I say? I said every game. The fact that like I can go on the Internet Archive and somebody has worked to preserve all of those weird old Tiger handhelds from the 90s is incredible.
Yeah.
Because those things, if you might not think that those are like really complicated or really anything special, but they're amazing when you like can see, when you look at the screen, you realize that like all of the characters, all of the pieces had to be animated to fit in the screen. And then they had to program them to move between them sequentially so that it, you know, when you're Batman, like the one I always played was Batman, there was like 3 roofs and you went between the 3 roofs and had to punch the guys that were coming. And so it's the 3 ways they animated Batman on each roof, and then like the Batarang going across, and then the different places the guys could be. Like that took art, that took skill, that took design. And having that, you know, 1, playable, but then 2, like having, if you could have any of that process information, any of that design stuff, any of the thoughts of those people, that would be just as valuable as Todd Howard giving a talk at GDC about rebooting the Xbox. You know, it's all about what your goal is. It's all about what your intentionality is.
Yeah, it's a great point, especially with it having, you also reminded me of like, I've been playing the hell out of the Aladdin one and 100 Dalmatians, and having levels, right? Difficulties in terms of it getting more difficult, not like exponentially, but slightly more. You know, when Cruella de Vil is coming on to play, or you got to get through the magic carpet thing. I'm thinking, wow, this thing is, I didn't think anything of it back then. I'm just having fun. But looking at it now, it's like, yeah, there was some complex stuff going on there for its time to be engaging. Yeah, it was all amazing.
I appreciate the growing list of people that are working to preserve that history, collect that history, and make it visible for people.
And those providing history.
Right. Everybody who's working in that whole process, and people who are making games now, like I feel incredibly honored to, like, as a streamer, to get game keys. You know, that I will email people, or I will receive emails from people that are like, hey, check out my game, here's a key, like, you know, you should play it, all of this. That is still incredible to me. And I think I hope it stays incredible for as long as I decide to do it, because it's so amazing to be. I'm getting a little misty eyed because I'm a big emotional baby. It's a very special feeling to be like trusted with the effort of so many people. You know, that is the effort of however many people over how long, that it's like, here, just have this. We trust you with this. We trust you to be the arbiter of this. Like, maybe people don't think of it like as seriously as that.
I don't think they do.
But no, but I do. Like, it feels so special to me, to like, people work however long, years and years, and they're like, here, have this. Like, it's a big deal. I think people discount it.
I do too. And we definitely need more mindsets, especially as I know the trend of streaming and playing games increases, that they have your mentality for sure, because I think it means a lot for to have that, and for you to value it at that level. There's a lot of respect there.
This is going to be the last question, Chase. I want to say before we jump into it, again, thank you so much for taking time to sit down with me. We've been chatting so long. This has been such a treat. I really, first off, I appreciate your time always. I always appreciate people taking time to sit and chat. But this has been an absolute delight. This has been. I'm gonna play Rengoku tomorrow. Like, no lie, I'm gonna play Rengoku.
I'm playing it tonight now too.
I love it.
I gotta go do it.
I love it. I'm so. It has jumped to the top of my list. I'm so excited.
Yes.
But I always want to make a point to thank people for taking time out to be on the podcast, talk about their stuff, make time for me. This is the last.
Say quickly.
No, go for it.
Sorry, I just want to quickly say thanks for having me on. Thanks for reaching out to me, having me on the platform and everything. And I hope to see it grow and continue and be more successful. But I value it too, because you're allowing me to speak and get to know you and bring to your audience and things like that as well. So it's definitely likewise and reciprocated.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I probably said the exact same thing at when we sat down to chat, but it's been such a fun thing doing the podcast. It feels immediately so like symbiotic. Like everybody that I interview, their stuff, I immediately want them to succeed the most. I mean, I'm just like, this is the coolest thing. I love all this stuff, and it's so fun. It's such a fun thing to do, to talk to people. And then the thing I always say is, I hope people enjoy listening to the podcast after that. Like, I had a good time talking with Chase. I hope people enjoy the interview. Because I had a good time, so that's fine. I hope you like it.
We laughed. We talked about cool stuff. All the things you're getting me on all my passions. So yeah, it was a blast.
The last question is the 3-question. I came up with it randomly in the first episode. I asked my guest her top three guests she would like to have on her show, and so I always come up with a top 3 question through this. I usually come up with it during the episode, but I knew we were a little crunched for time, so I wanted to make sure that I had it ready to go. Chase, okay. What are your top 3 video game soundtracks?
Well, it's funny. This is going to be really quick because I've already kind of answered it. So yeah, I'm going to go with Turok Battle of the Dinosaurs on Game Boy, Beyond Oasis on Sega Genesis, and Tomb Raider 1996 on PlayStation. Yeah, I wrote an article about 50 game soundtracks, and so those are my top. It's a blog on my website. And because when I was in uni and someone who was trying to get into games, they were saying, "What's your top 50 or what's your favorite video game soundtracks or top 10?" And they're like, "Oh," and I was thinking, I'll get back to you, but I'm going to write a blog about this. And so I got back to him. I was like, here's the blog. Here's my top 50. Have fun. And they range from so many different styles. And I'm thinking, because he wanted to learn and study about it. And that was the thing. I was like, you have a lot of homework to do.
That's great, though, because you already did all of the work to be like, here's my top 50.
Yeah, top 50.
How have you gone back and updated that list? Like, has something come out that you're like, this has to be on the list?
Let's look for it. Let's see. At the time when I made the list, I was nominated in the industry for an award amongst like really big folks in the industry. It was a really big honor. I had no idea that was going to happen. So it was pretty interesting when it did. Shoot. Hey, well, guess what? I'm sorry to say, but I could probably just send this to you later. I can't find it right now. It's that old. It's that old. I think, dang, when I wrote that, 2017, 2016, it's on my blog, but Google's not finding it. So that means I'm going to have to go through pages of my blog, which thankfully, I post about most things that are happening up to date. But yeah, I'm just going to go, and when I find them, like, here you go, and then I'll answer your question.
You talk about, you made that to give to them for homework. That's my homework. Like, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to get stuck in.
But not before you listen to a Ground Zero.
Yes. First one. I mean, I'm going to make dinner, so I'm probably going to I'll put that on as I'm cooking. And that'll be a nice. That's it. Chase, thank you so much. Again, it's so funny getting to the end of the podcast. I say this every time. It feels really silly because it's just, you hit the point in the middle where it's just like, this is what we do. This is it. We're just chatting and having a good time, but eventually it has to come to an end. I'll give you a little minute here at the outro. Just again, remind everybody, where they can find you, what you got going on. As always, as a reminder, in case I don't remember to say it in the intro. All the links to all of Chase's stuff will be in the show notes, including all the stuff we talk about. I'm gonna have to sit down and work on some show notes for this one. But all the links
thinking, oh boy.
The links to like Chase's website and Bandcamp and all that stuff will be in the show notes. So you can go check that out.
Yeah, thank you again, Matt, for having me on. It's a really big pleasure. So you can find me Chase Bethea, BETHEA.com. You can find me there. ChaseBethea.bandcamp, where my entire discography is on there. I'm also on this new platform called Even. I am not going to be releasing any of my music on Spotify anymore. They are thieves. I will stand on that until they decide to pay me. So it'll be available all the other places that want, but you can do your best support by listening and purchasing the soundtrack, ChaseBethea.bandcamp.com. It's very affordable. And I also have a book coming out this year. It's called Student of the Game, How I Navigated the Video Game Industry the Past Decade. It's going to talk about mentality, kind of alluding to the things that was here, breaking down what true networking is in a mature level, debunking imposter syndrome so we can get out of that, and anecdotes of things and experiences that I've had in my career in the decade that I've been doing game music. So look out for that as well. And also look out for some more live performances of my work. Hopefully I get on a Ground Zero tour. Hopefully I do a book tour as well. But it should be some really cool things happening this year and some more advances and things of that nature. So just keep it locked.
Hell yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to check out the book because I think mature networking is a thing that a lot of people in the streaming space could stand to learn. I think a lot of, no, I'm not calling anybody out specifically, but I will put out a general call out. I think a lot of people who are in the streaming space don't understand what networking really means and how to like
just the streaming space.
Well, in my experience,
you don't work in the field. No, yeah, you don't work in the field. So yeah, you're getting a glimpse. That's probably very tiny.
But yeah, no, I'm excited to. I'm excited. I didn't know I was excited to check out that book. Now that I know about it, I'm excited to check it out and hear your thoughts on that. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Chase, thank you again so much. Go ahead and say bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
The interview, another episode done. This one was a little bit of a long one, but we had such a fantastic time. Honestly, the time flew by. I want to thank Chase again so much for taking time to sit down and chat. It's always such a delight to have someone on to talk about their stuff, to share the time with me and all of you. It continues to be such a big deal for me. You can find links to everything for Chase in the show notes, including his website and his Bandcamp. I highly recommend you wait until a Bandcamp Friday if you can. Those are the days which Bandcamp waives all fees and gives all of the money paid directly to the artist. It's a great way to make sure that the people that create the stuff that you like get the most support for your dollar. Speaking of support for your dollar, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/whatchadoin'. You can sign up over there to help me pay for hosting and fees and all of this. I would greatly appreciate it. But having said that, thank you so much for listening. I honestly love getting the emails every week, seeing all the download numbers, seeing people check out our work. Some of the recent episodes have shown up in the crowdfunding pages for the stuff we talk about. And that means the world to me because that's kind of exactly why I made the podcast. I will say I'm starting to work on transcriptions. So if that's something that you've been interested in, I'm figuring out the workflow for that. It's a completely new thing and I'm having to kind of teach myself how to do it. So it will not be a thing that I get to, it won't be a thing that's done immediately, but it is a thing that I'm working on as a nice feature to have. All right, I've got more podcasts to edit. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.